glad to have you join today's webinar. My name is Jonah Ilidi and I'll be moderating this session. I'm the communications officer for Wadimos. We have interpretation services available. So if you go down your screen, you have options, English and French. If you click on it, you select which one you are most comfortable listening to or you prefer to listen to. Without taking much time, I would want to invite Paul Osei-Kufuor to give some remarks. Paul Osei-Kufuor is the network coordinator for Wadimos. And he'll be delivering the opening remarks for the session. Thank you very much.
Right.
Recording in progress.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My understanding is that the camera is being worked out and I'll come live very soon. But I want to extend a very good morning to everyone once again who has joined us from all parts of the globe, and especially to our partners and colleagues from GenSet, Africa Defenders Network, participants, and Wadimos Network members and panelists. I extend to you special greetings from the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network members, and as a transnational civil society platform, we are very much interested in developments around the sub-region. Let me indicate that Wadimos is a regional initiative of the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, and our office is based at the CDD's office in Accra. So just a little bit of background about Wadimos. In 2022, on the UN International Day for Democracy, the region experienced the birth of the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network. And we had a common aim or a collective agenda, and our aim was to leverage the collective power of civil society across regions, across countries, and to build cooperation, build solidarity, and advance our voice to counter democratic backsliding in West Africa. So we create a platform for multi-stakeholder engagement. We create a platform for actors in different spectrum of democracy promotion in the sub-region, human rights defenders, social movements who are engaged in promoting elections, civil society organizations working in transition countries, and also in peace and security. And then we harness the capacity of civil society to promote the quality of elections. We help civil society members to intervene in countries managing transitions from military rule, and above all, promote respect for the rule of law and human rights, particularly for human rights defenders across the sub-region. So Wadimos was in response to the continual decline of democracy that we experience in West Africa. And you agree with me that since 2022, we've had more than 6 coups and attempted coups in West Africa. And even in Africa, where we've had about 8 coups and we are still trying to manage transitions, more than half of these military interventions have been in West Africa. So the West Africa has now become what the people describe as the epicenter of military intervention in politics. But this also have ramifications and consequences. It is also worsening and deteriorating the human rights situations and conditions in the sub-region. And for us as Wadimos, under our human rights observatory monitoring and reporting mechanisms, we have recorded a number of human rights violations in the sub-region, and especially in countries that are currently under the rule of the military. We have seen harassment, we've reported incidents of harassment, We've called for support and mobilizations to defend activists who have been attacked in their course of work. We've seen a lot of demonstrations and citizens trying to experience their rights and civil liberties being suppressed by authoritarian regimes. So this is a very much difficult situation that we find in the sub-region. And because human rights remains a cornerstone and a critical component of the work WADEMOS is involved, we engage our partners, African Defenders, and the Gender Center for Development to explore partnerships to help promote solidarity and protection for human rights defenders and activists. So today we are here to discuss a report that was commissioned by WADEMOS in partnership with GenSed. And the report presents the state of human rights defenders in West Africa. It is our belief and expectations that the findings that will come out from the report will provide empirical and practical experiences from HRDs across the sub-region that can go a long way to inform our programming in support for human rights defenders in West Africa. On behalf of the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network members, our steering committee, our program management unit, we thank all participants and extend a special appreciation to GenSed for accepting to partner with us to carry this project through. We look forward to a very engaging, insightful, and interactive conversation this morning. And I want to take this opportunity to formally welcome you all to this event. I thank you for your attention.
Introductory remarks. I would like to invite the Executive Director for the Gender Center for Empowering Development, GenSed, to also present their remarks. The report that will be launched later at this program was put together by GenSed with funding from WADEMOS.
Thank you, colleagues. Once again, I'm Estateria, the Executive Director for Gender Center for Empowering Development, GenSed, and also the coordinator for the Ubuntu Hub City under the African Defenders Network. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are most grateful. If you look at the region, as Paul reiterated, the region has become more volatile. I think it started becoming more volatile when Nigeria started the NSAS protest, which led a lot of people, a lot of human rights defenders were at stake. They were at risk because of the situation they find themselves in. But I just want us to recollect our mind on some basic issues. Who are human rights defenders in the first place? And if you are talking about democracy, human rights defenders are actors who help in safeguarding our democracy. And so you have people in the media who are willing to expose wrongdoings, corrupt dealings. There are people who are defending the rights of the minority groups. There are people who are also defending our democratic principles and values to be upheld. And you and I would attest to it that this will not be in the interest of most of our political elites, especially when it goes against their agenda. And so most times you find these people under threat. And from the African Defenders perspective under the Ubuntu Hub City, we realize that a lot more human rights defenders are at risk. How do we position ourselves and how do we plan? You cannot do any advocacy without having a proper research done. So your advocacy will be tailored, will be a research-based one. You can also have any other intervention without the proper research. So under African Defenders, we had original research to ascertain whether we need to have a hub city in the region. And of course, the volatile situation of the region called for us to establish hub cities. So currently under the African Defenders, we have the Ubuntu Hub City, which is a holistic evacuation or emergency response for human rights defenders at risk. We have it in 3 countries in the region. We have the Anglophone West Africa one based in Ghana. We have the Francophone one based in Ivory Coast. And then we have the Lusophone based in Cape Verde. And so we've arrived to the conclusion that yes, the region is volatile. We need to extend support to human rights defenders. But the next question is, how do we continue our support, and who are the targeted ones? Which human rights defenders are more vulnerable? We could only be able to come up with a response or an answer if only we are able to do an imperative research, empirical research that gives us the correct and the right data that is needed for us to be able to tailor our approach in addressing some of the nuances that comes with the work that human rights defenders have been doing. And so under the Hub City, we've organized so many initiatives that would respond to some of these things. We held a meeting in Ghana with the human rights institutions, National Human Rights Institution, the umbrella, the Africa Human Rights Institution Network, of which Ghana Human Rights Commission is the vice. And again, Ghana Human Rights Commission happens to be the vice for the human rights institutions in West Africa. So we discussed how can human rights commissions also protect human rights defenders. They came up with their issues and all that. But then we still felt it wasn't enough. How do we really engage them? As it stands now in the region, you can't speak of any document from our body like ECOWAS that speaks to human rights defenders in the region and how they need to be protected and all that. So today, I believe that the research is going to give us insight into some of the questions that we as African defenders and GenSed have been asking. How can we better do our work? And how can we protect human rights defenders, which in a way would advance the cause of democracy? Democracy principles will be upheld. Human rights will be protected. And ordinary West African citizens will be able to enjoy their rights. And especially minority groups like the women groups will also be able to advance the cause of the group that they do represent. And so I believe that today we're going to do justice to the questions that have been on our minds. And to wrap up, I would say that it's been a tough situation in the region. From African defenders' perspective, you see the number of applications that are being received on a daily basis. Human rights defenders who are at risk. It's mind-boggling, and some of them are still in prison unlawfully. No fault of theirs. All they wanted was to uphold democracy, human rights, and protect citizens that they so do wish to advocate for them. It's been tough, and so that's why we need to have this. We needed to have this discussion to see how best we could bring some sort of discussions or approach, recommendations, and all that, so that we can address the issues as we go along. And so, on top of my head, I could say that this year, African defenders have helped over 50 human rights defenders. And the approach that we do is very holistic, because it also borders on we use a feminist approach where the families of these human rights defenders are also put into consideration. We make sure that we are very sensitive to their needs beyond them, because these are people who are breadwinners in their homes and they have to flee. So we put all those things into consideration. And one of the key things that has been on the mind of us is, what is the exit point? What is next for the human rights defender who is at risk and is fleeing? So thank you very much for Wademos for coming in to say this is a very brilliant initiative that you are doing. We want to help with the research so that we can all see how collectively we can join hands to address the concerns of human rights defenders in the region. Thank you very much for having me. And I believe we are going to have a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Esther, for the remarks. We'll move straight to hearing from some of our partners who have goodwill messages for us at this event. I want to invite Alphonsus Bani. Alphonsus Bani is the Executive Director of the Human Rights Defenders Commission in Sierra Leone. He's also the chair of the Anglophone West Africa Human Rights Defenders Network. And so, Alphonsus, please, you have the floor for your brief remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think
whilst Alphonsus tried to resolve the challenges with his network,
I want to stand on.
Hello, Alphonsus.
I am the director of the Human Rights Radio. Hear me now?
Yes, it's much
Hello?
better.
It's better now. Hello?
Hello, Alphonsus, you have the floor.
My name is Alphonsus Biambani. I'm the Executive Secretary of the Human Rights Defenders Network Sierra Leone, and I doubles also to be the sub-regional coordinator of the West African Human Rights Defenders Network, the Anglophone chapter. My remarks this morning will focus purely on the theme of what we are trying to do. But let me just say, the civic space in West Africa is not just under threat. It is under an urgent and immediate threat. Human rights defenders, including land and environmental rights defenders, women's rights defenders, media activists, as well as civil and political rights defenders, are being entangled in a web of regional and national politics. Repressive laws are spreading, with increased restriction on freedoms to express, participate, assemble, and associate. New technologies have helped civil society movement to grow, but they have also given government excuses to control civil society movements and media freedoms, often under the pretext of national security and regional stability. I want to note that effective resolution of the issue at hand is not just a hope, but a call to action for the transformation of West Africa. We, as human rights defenders, have transformative vision, active participation, and unwavering commitment to change. This is not just a call to action, but a beacon of hope for a better future for West Africa. The right to protect and be protected are at the core of participation and engagement of women, youth, and the directly and indirectly affected persons, provides and hopes of states and individuals alike for the immediate, medium, and long-term enjoyment of civic space in West Africa. Under the very challenging situations that HRDs have to go through, many HRDs relocate themselves, some go underground, and in most cases, some shut down completely. In government and other institutions can progressively continue to be addressed. We sincerely hope the cooperation between government institutions and human rights defenders represented here today will be strengthened and sustained. I would also like to appreciate the cooperation from the UN agencies, the African Union, and the ECOWAS. And I also acknowledge and thank the support from donor partners in creating and sustaining space for healing and strengthening the resilience of human rights defenders through the Ubuntu Hub cities. These are critical in realizing the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, where no one is left behind, and the Africa we want. Once again, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Gender Center for Empowering organizing this event and for your continuous efforts in the future regarding this work. Your contributions are not just invaluable, they are the backing of our collective appreciation. With this, I'd like to wish all of us a successful report launch and conclude.
Thank you very much, Alphonsus, for your remarks. The internet wasn't very kind to us, but I'm sure we got the import of the message you conveyed in your very brief remarks. I would want to invite Clement Vol to also present his brief remarks and a goodwill message. Clement is the former UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of association and peaceful assembly, and a member of the Pan-African Defenders Network. And so, Clement, you are welcome. Kindly, I would appreciate it if your remarks could be very brief and succinct. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, facilitator. I hope you can hear me. If it's the case, please just let me know if you can hear me.
Yes, it's great.
Great. Thank you very much. Let me first greet all of you, those who are attending this the launch of this report, online and offline. And also thank also the organizer of these events, mainly African Defenders, WADEMOS, and also the main, I think, organizer, which is the Gender Center for Empowerment Development in West Africa. As you say, my name is Clement Voulet, and since last April, I was the UN Special Rapporteur on the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. And part of my mandate, as you know, is to monitor the civic space in the country and to report it to the Human Rights Council, and also engage states in how they can improve the legal framework to ensure the work of civil society. I want also to say that I'm also happy again to be part of the launch of these reports on human rights defenders in Africa, which from my reading cover, the research cover 10 countries, but it also give an overview of about tendency, the trends and also issues that we see in other countries, which are not so different from those 10 countries that are in the core of the research. I want also to highlight here that this research is coming in very particular time for West Africa. And as we have seen since the civil war in Libya, how this impacts heavily the security issue in West Africa. So there are so many factors that trigger the current situation in West Africa, as I mentioned, including the fall of or the civil war in Libya, which have an impact to increase and to empower terrorist groups in the region. And from that, we saw how the terrorism spread around the continent, and the consequences, one of the consequences that we saw is also the emerging of coup that happened in West Africa under the pretext that the civilian regime are not able to address security issues. It's important to highlight some of those things because we intend sometimes to forget the factor that really trigger the challenge that human rights defenders are facing in this region. So, and in addition of this coup that we saw emerging in this in West Africa, we have also the whole issue about the constitutional changes, the unconstitutional changes in the region, which also is one of the issue that also polarize the whole political scene, but also bring also political insecurity in some of the West African countries. And also one of the issues that is important, since I don't have much time to go in depth on some of those factors, and one of the things that we intend also to forget is also how the region also was heavily hit by the COVID-19. And since not about the death of the toll of the death, but mostly of the increase of inequality in the region, then exposing many society in inequalities, in also very tough living conditions. We have also seen elections and also fake election, and some of the challenge that is bring also for human rights defenders working on election issue, but also the last thing is also the emerging around the continent of anti-right group that we are seeing. All of these factors are important to understand also that the region, the West African region, which few years ago was seen as one of the model in terms of promoting human rights, in terms of understanding the importance of civil society work, become now in the region that some of these factors is making very challenging for human rights defenders to work in this region. Some of the issues that we have seen, and also I monitor during my work as a special rapporteur, is that we saw the emerging of some legislation that undermine the work and limit the capacity of human rights defenders to operate as provided by the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders. We also saw in this region, in a recent issue, a case that we can mention is also the association law in Cote d'Ivoire, the family law in the draft family law in Ghana, and some of those ingredients, including the fight against terrorism and the emerging of security law that make the restrict the space for human rights defenders, in a sense that some of those legislation intend to not separate between the work of human rights defenders, pro-democracy movement, with what we can call terrorist movements. And we saw also the repression of the peaceful protest that happened during either after the election or before the election, where citizens or pro-democracy movement are contesting the legality of the election or the whole issue around how the elections are organized. But also one aspect that we saw, and is important to also notice that, is also the digital space, which also this report monitor. That we saw the increase in the restriction of access to digital sphere. At the same time, we are also seeing, when the state are putting those restrictions, we are also seeing that on the digital spaces, human rights defenders are harassed by anti-right movement. Women human rights defenders are also harassed in this space, making also the work of human rights defenders sometimes also being called as the work that is undermining national security, is undermining development, but also is undermining the tradition. We saw in many countries how the space, the digital space is becoming a tool to repress human rights defenders, to make human rights defenders' work not relevant anymore. I want also to say that this report, and I mentioned that this report is coming timely, because it is coming also to complement some of those initiatives that are ongoing in the region. We remember recently the launch of Women Human Rights Defenders Network in West Africa by the Cote d'Ivoire Coalition and Burkina Faso Coalition, which also shows the importance of today for the international community, UN mechanism, African Commission mechanism also, to pay particular attention on issue of protection of human rights defenders in the region, because we can show how many institutions now are calling for more attention, because the region is becoming a difficult region and difficult space for human rights defenders to live. So we saw also recently also the whole campaign launched by the West African Human Rights Defenders Network in relation to the Women Human Rights Defender Network, which also this report monitored. This report was also clear that women human rights defenders also do not have space when it comes to the protection of human rights in the region, which is important also to take in account. And we know also that LGBTI movement also are movements are undermined in the region, because of traditional value, because of some of anti-right groups that are emerging. So I don't want to go in depth in some of those analyses, but I think that the report highlights many things and many recommendations that are important for us today to pay attention, because the region is becoming very difficult and very dangerous for the work of protection and promotion of human rights. But one of the things that I would like also to highlight here before ending, because I'm not sure I still have a lot of time, is also that it's important beyond some of those challenges also to think about today the challenge, the political challenge the region is going through. One of the aspects which I would like also all of us to take in account when we are reading this report, in addition of when we are reading this report, is also the concept, the misunderstanding in our region about what is about the fighting or being Pan-Africanism and being a pro-democracy movement. Today, defending democracy in the region sometimes is seen as being part of the foreign agenda. Because today, people misunderstand what is the Pan-Africanism, what is the liberation movement. And some human rights defenders come to me and telling me that because we promote human rights, we promote fundamental freedom of our country, we are seen not being a Pan-Africanism. Because we are not in favor of those regimes, those regimes set up by the coup, authoritarianism regime that are intending to stay in power without organizing fair and free election. That's very important. And also another aspect I would like also to live with here is also the fact that today we are all criticizing our regional system, ECOWAS. We are all saying that ECOWAS manages some of the conflict. But today, let's also be honest. When people call for weakening ECOWAS, we are also calling for weakening of democracy. We are also calling for weakening of democratic principles, but also emerging of authoritarian regime. ECOWAS still something that our father built for many years. Yes, of course, we need some changes, but we shouldn't draw ECOWAS out, because the weakening of ECOWAS increase also the risk that human rights defenders are facing in the region, because weakening of ECOWAS has as the ultimate objective of emerging of authoritarian regime, which we know from experience are not friendly for human rights defenders' work. So I want also to thank again the organizer of this, of the launching of this report for this initiative, and also that this initiative is coming timely. But we should make sure that the recommendation of these reports can live, that those recommendations can be implemented through an effective agenda, an effective strategy to bring back our region to democracy, and the region where human rights defenders are accepted and their work is accepted. The region where being human rights defenders cannot be seen as being terrorists, but being the fighter for freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vole. Those were lots of pointers that I took here, and I'm sure you shared very great insights which are helpful, not just for the team here, but for everyone who has joined this webinar. I'd also want to indicate that ECOWAS sends their apologies for not joining, and wish as well they are awaiting the reports and would work, with stakeholders to address the concerns that are expressed in the report. Let me move quickly to one of our main events for today. We have a presentation of the reports that we've been alluding to since the start of the session. And we have Dr. Michael Akagbo, who is a researcher and human rights expert, to take us through the key highlights of the reports. And I'm very sure that most of us here are waiting for the details of this report. And so I invite Dr. Michael Akagbo to lead us on this journey. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jonah, for the introduction. I wouldn't waste my time to do an introduction since you've done that. So I'll go right into the report because I know we are time constrained and we didn't begin on time. So the report, which is captures the situation of human rights defenders in West Africa study report, initiated by Wadimos and undertaken by GenSed. The background to this report has already been espoused by both they call it Paul and Esther. So I'm not going to dwell much on that, but the whole idea is that the situation of HRDs in the region is under threat. As has been espoused by both Clement and Alfonso's, they have becoming a critical population, and the need for us to seek to find ways to protect them from the threats. Even though within the West African sub-region, HRDs are still yet to fulfill their full potential, especially within this region. And we do understand that there are a lot of systemic and political structural impediments that have excluded them from the democratic enterprise, including the shrinking of the civic space. And because in most spaces, I believe Clement had just nailed that human rights defenders are seen as trouble rousers. They are considered to be agents of foreign governments. They distort the Pan-African dream of a united African state. So the ecosystem has come to be characterized by challenges, including threats, harassment, arbitrary detentions, torture, and even death. The political economy, political instability in this sense, has been occasioned also by the democratic backsliding or the unconstitutional change of government, which had created unfavorable environments for HRDs. Since 2020, the COVID era, most democratic societies have declined into subtle shades of authoritarianism. And this has affected the work that HRDs do in the sub-region. And it is for this reason that Wadimos and GenSed had collaborated for this exploratory study, which was to identify the most pressing issues that HRDs face in the region and to see how and where support and assistance can be provided to them. The objectives, which has been implicit in all our discussions this morning, has been based to look at 4 things. Assess the current situation of human rights defenders in West Africa, including those of marginalized populations, particularly women HRDs. We're also looking to identify the present challenges and risks faced by human rights defenders in the sub-region. And also we are looking to analyze the effectiveness of existing legal frameworks and support mechanisms that HRDs have access to. Then finally, we look to provide recommendations for enhancing the protection and support of HRDs in the region. The study is specifically designed in a way to document the experiences, the challenges, and also the achievements of HRDs within the region. And it does this by shedding light on the complex socio-cultural, socio-economic, political realities that shape and impact HRD's work, and also the broader human rights landscape in West Africa. In terms of methodology, this was an exploratory study. It was qualitative in nature, exploratory in the sense that what we seek to do was to understand the problems or issues, or better clarify the parameters that explain the realities of HRDs in the region. The triangulation approach was used. This approach basically allows for the use of multiple methods of data sources to create or to develop a comprehensive understanding of phenomena. So if you look at the report, it seems to be qualitative, it seems to be quantitative. Everything is always a triangulation approach. 100 HRDs, 100 participants were selected from 10 countries out of the 15 ECOWAS countries. The selection was purposive. We utilized the 2023 Freedom in the World Index scores to select the countries that were included in the study. There was a questionnaire with a total of 48 self-filled, open and closed-ended, that covered issues of gender, demographics, and the thematic areas of concern, and this was evenly distributed to participants. Also, all of these were translated into the Francophone, English, and then also Lusophone language for ease of comprehension by participants. The data collection occurred over a 2-week period from November 16 to November 30th. So our finding. The first thing we tried to look at was based on our first objective, was to understand and assess the situation of the countries that were selected for this research. What we did find, and this is just a brief shot, the main report will go out with a detailed explanation of what the findings show. But Burkina Faso, for instance, we all understand, is a very militaristic environment right now, and it's very precarious in the sense that there's increased reports of harassment, intimidation, and deportation of human rights defenders since the takeover in January 2022. Cape Verde, the situation was found to be good. Political and civil rights are respected. Ghana also has achieved a status of good but worrying, in the sense that in very recent times, there has been concerns about police brutalities. There's been concerns on clampdown on protests and demonstration. And there's also this attempt by the state to sanction discrimination against sexual minorities using the law. Senegal, it is worrying. We report the situation to be a worrying situation. The freedom of assembly and expression seems to have been restricted for many years now. Sierra Leone is considered a volatile environment. The right to freedom of peaceful assembly continues to be restricted, and law enforcement officers are arbitrarily using excessive force to clamp down on dissent. Togo is also precarious. The right to freedom of expression is under threat. We've documented arbitrary arrest and detentions of voices that speak against government. And we all understand that democracy dies in darkness. So in places where people are not able to freely express themselves, democracy cannot function the way it should be. Nigeria, the situation report shows it to be a volatile situation. Nigeria is a mixed bag of everything. There's infringement of freedom of expressions, and there's also access to the media. Guinea, Mali both share similarities in terms of their situational report. They are both militaristic, they're both precarious. There's increased reports of violations on rights of human rights defenders, media blackouts, attack on journalists, CSOs, all mainly by state security forces. In terms of participant spaces that they act, the spaces for activism, as you can see from the graph, the highest participation of participants was within the democracy space, all by those of women and girls, and then that of gender, corruption, and then it slows down, it scales down to the least of the least of participation spaces was the economy. But as we can see that, as in most societies, an enlightened citizenry is what makes a democratic system more sustainable. So yes, the economy might not have a lot of HRDs focus, but citizens' rights is what guarantees free economies in a way that they need to become functional for development. In terms of demographic, we found that there's a huge gender disparity. The ecosystem of HRDs is heavily dominated by men. 62% of respondents indicated that their genders were males, almost twice of females who had reported. But when you drill down the report, you will find the sociocultural and political impediments that restrict or create hindrances to advancement of women to be within the space. For instance, a woman HRD in Mali was of the view that women HRD faces much intimidation from the community, particularly traditional leaders, as some of the issues discussed, according to them, are cultural and traditional heritage that needs to be protected. And if they want to change, a woman should not be leading it. It speaks to the position of women within most traditional African societies, in the sense that the patriarchal systems do not allow for female voices in macro decision makings that has relevance for the community or state. We also, the report also showed that there is a challenge when it comes to the quality of HRDs that operate within the sectors. The key challenge in the region, and also how it affects the quality of right advocacy and defending the civic space. Understand that human rights are complex issues that requires complex understanding of phenomena to be able to engage with the state and society. And within the African setting, as the study has shown, credentialism is a prized asset for engaging with authority figures. Meaning that when you want to engage with the state, at most time, state actors are looking to see what qualifications you hold before they will want to engage with you. So when you want to engage with state actors and you go and your qualifications is those of a high schooler, most times state actors will not make space to have engagement with you. But when they are engaging with you, you have a credential of a doctor, a professor, or whatever credentials you hold, it creates opportunity for engagement with the state. We also found that within the sub-region, there were significant disparities in educational qualifications among HRDs across the countries. You found in Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, and Burkina Faso that there's a high prevalence of postgraduate qualification. And that, in its way, when you look at the HRD situation in these spaces, this seems to be more integrated and more engaging with state actors because of the availability of specialized knowledge and expertise among HRDs personnel in these countries to address this complex human rights issue. So this was one of the challenges that we found in some of the other states, that due to the low level of the quality of HRDs, it was serving as an impediment and challenge to be expanding the space within those countries. We also found evidence of precarious environment. I think Clement has spoken to this, that the situation for safety and security has become a challenge for most HRDs. From their study, 58% of participants believe that the safety concerns, safety conditions, and the security that the state provides them to be able to go out and do their work was unfavorable. In some places like Mali, Togo, and Burkina Faso, the deployment of anti-terrorism laws have been used to curb HRD activism and work. A participant in Togo who captured this situation, this precarious situation, opined that the human rights situation in Togo in general is very deleterious. Human rights defenders are thus subject to muzzling, harassment, and restrictions on freedoms. In Guinea, it's similar context. We are operating in the context of insecurity for human rights defenders, especially during this period of military transition in Guinea. The important thing about this study, which I probably need to say also, is that the qualitative nature of the study gave us to hear from the participants' own voices, their view or perspective of the conditions in which they are operating. But it is not all bad. Some countries like Ghana and also Cape Verde participants were of the view that in Ghana, for instance, the participants were of the view that the social climate is favorable, as is the normative framework, which the Constitution provides and provide and protects the enshrined rights and freedoms that are in there. In Cape Verde, defenders who said they were able to operate in freely safe, relatively safe environment because there is a favorable legal framework and that they don't face many instances of violence. Importantly, tied to all of the above is what we consider to be a looming danger, a shrinking civic space. This could be real or perceived, but there is, from the research, from the study, there is a perceived insufficiency of constitutional authoritarianism and the weakness of the rule of law. In that, even though elections are ongoing, leaders are being elected in most countries except Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea, we are starting to have a situation where constitutional presidents are becoming authoritarian in the way they engage with citizens. 50% of participants said the civic space in their countries were shrinking. A participant from Togo, for instance, advised that they were arrested and imprisoned on trumped-up charges just because their voices had to be silenced. When it comes to Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal, there is a high incidence of state capture of the media space by political elites and the control of news. What we are seeing in these spaces is that the airwaves or the media is owned by the political or state actors themselves. And in this way, they control what news is disseminated or what news is allowed to be disseminated to citizens. And then also, we found that government and state actors were heavily implicit in the intimidation and arrest of HRDs within the region, as the report will show. In Burkina Faso, a participant who captured this said, the conditions are not favorable for a full expression of our rights, as the civic space is very restricted. There are many threats and intimidation in the exercise of the profession. This captures the unfavorability nature of the space and how gradually the looming danger, which we have been since the COVID time, we've seen it has actually increased, that the civil space seems to be shrinking in almost every democratic state within the sub-region. Also, we looked at the impact of activism within the digital space, and we found that there is the advent of the state becoming very surveillant. We are basically looking at the digital space has now become the new frontier for state surveillance and control. Now you have human rights defenders whose digital footprints are being monitored by states. We have states purchasing spywares that allow them to go into personal online spaces and read people's emails and capture their conversations. And these have been used as standpoints for prosecuting some HRDs in some countries. In Togo, for instance, we heard that we are often listened to. Togo has penalized publications in the digital space that the government judges as false, especially those by journalists. We also have the general sentiment among almost all HRDs is that for several countries across the region, the state has total control of internet, and with institutional and legal mechanisms, they manage to confiscate this right from citizens through abusive and restrictive legal measures. Censorship, cyber surveillance, and total blackout restrictions have come to become some characteristics of how state surveillance of the digital space has turned out. So the third objective, trying to look to see. So in terms of all that we have talked about, in terms of the digital space, the looming danger of civic space, shrinking civil space, the precarious environments, the challenge of quality, we were looking to see what legal frameworks and support that mechanisms support mechanisms for HRD defenders within the region. We do know that there are institutional legal frameworks that are cut across from the UN, the regional frameworks on the African human rights frameworks, even the national frameworks that should serve as places for protection for HRDs within their specific countries. But from the study, 53% expressed dissatisfaction that the existing frameworks are unfavorable. They are unfavorable in the sense that some were of the view that the national frameworks were designed in a way to stifle criticisms of government officials and policies. So it does not allow for space for HRDs to be able to go in and be able to work and express their views and opinions against policies that they do not agree with or that they found to counter what our democratic principles are. In Ghana, in Senegal, Nigeria, Guinea, Mali, Sierra Leone, and Togo, these countries recorded high percentages, almost in the 80s, that the legal frameworks that they have allow them to work as human rights defenders. In Mali and Burkina Faso, they believe that the military remotely controlled their judicial systems, and that has tightened the HRD space in a way that they are unable to perform to their full potentials. An HRD in Mali had said that there is a tightening of civil society and non-compliance with national, sub-regional, and international conventions and treaties. In Guinea, an HRD has also expressed a similar sentiment that the work of human rights defenders is now protected. The state penalizes through criminal provisions what it judges as false news and contempt of public authority when human rights defenders denounce certain practices contrary to the respect for human rights. So we asked, what about redress mechanisms? Do you think these redress mechanisms work? Because we do know that we have the institutionalized frameworks, the regional, the international treaties and conventions. But in terms of at the national level, we're looking to see whether the framework, the redress mechanisms, the human rights institutions, for instance, in Ghana, Shraj, the police, the courts, which provide avenues for HRDs to seek redress if their rights have been violated. Do these work? 51% believe that their access to seeking redress in their respective countries was unfavorable. Nigeria, a high 86%, believe that access to seek redress and mechanisms for redress are unfavorable and non-functional even when they existed. In Senegal, Cape Verde, and Ghana, these scored high favorabilities in terms that they believe that the institutionalized frameworks and the mechanisms that provides them redress was favorable for them to seek justice when their rights have been violated. As captured by an HRD in Burkina Faso, it says, which actually expressed the sentiments across many of the countries surveyed. It says the mechanisms exist, but they are not favorable, which was a general sentiment. Justices do not listen to human rights defenders, but describe them as troublemakers. So we asked, so what do you want to see? We asked HRD specifically to tell us in their own words what they want to see. Top on the list was the need for robust legal frameworks that will uphold and protect their fundamental human rights so they can operate freely within the spaces in which they operate. They were also looking for open civic spaces where the freedom to express views cannot be restricted, and also where they have access to accurate and non-biased information. In Ghana, I can say that we had passed the RTI bill, law, but even getting information sometimes from the state is a difficult thing to do. They also talk about the freedom of the press, including the right to freedom of association and assembly for citizens, and government accountability with a responsiveness to violations of rights of HRDs. They also push for protections for HRD rights, including the need for friendly regulatory environments. We want to see independent judiciaries and an independent police force that could curtail the victimization and targeting of HRDs. And also they were pushing for protections of whistleblower laws, protections of investigative journalism, protection of freedom of opinion, because they understand and believe that without a right to express your right of opinion, HRD space will become restricted and stifled. So at the end of the research, we put together, based on the collated views of participants and the secondary data of research, we put together some recommendations, which we have separated in terms of the regional, the national, in terms of regional and the national. At the ECOWAS level, we are pushing for legislative reforms that provide adequate protections and safeguards against intimidation, right violations, and harassment of HRDs, and the fostering of a democratic environment that underscores the value of diversity and secularism, which allows for dissent. We are also recommending that at the ECOWAS level, state actors and duty bearers should proactively collaborate with civil society to promote a democratic culture of inclusivity and participation. We are also recommending that there's a continuous push for legislation that promotes the independence of state institutions that work to respect, protect, and fulfill the rights of human rights defenders and all persons. We are also recommending that the violations of HRD rights should be swiftly investigated. Perpetrators should be held accountable, and victims should be provided with the necessary remedies. We also recommend that member states and their governments should prioritize social dialogue and engagement with human rights defenders and other stakeholders so that the civic space can become open. And also, we are pushing for the support and development of an ECOWAS protocol for protecting human rights defenders to be in line with the existing UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders. At the African or the continental level, we are pushing for the African Commission on Human Rights and People's Rights, for Human and People's Rights. We are recommending that the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights should make periodic visits to member states of ECOWAS so they can assess the situation of HRDs and issue periodic reports to draw attention to the problems of HRDs, and where violations of rights have been found, they should advocate for redress. And we are also advocating that there should be the African Commission on Human Rights and Commission on Human and People's Rights should lead in the development of an ECOWAS protocol for the protection of human rights defenders. At the national level, we are pushing for the implementation of the Marrakesh Declaration, which is committed to and protect the human rights of HRDs, especially women HRDs. We are also seeking for a strengthening of collaboration between HRDs, law enforcement, and relevant stakeholders to enhance the safety of human rights defenders. And we are also pushing for the establishment of a reporting mechanism, or if one already exists, we want to create a separate section on issues that are related just to HRDs. For civil societies operating within the region, we have several recommendations. I will just highlight just a couple, but we look to establish and administer a West African sub-regional legal fund for human rights defenders who have their rights violated. We are pushing for a development and implement training programs on digital security, and also digital security, and also on safety measures for HRDs. We are also looking to push for the implementation of initiatives to promote gender equality and inclusivity within the human rights sector. And then we are also looking to develop guidelines and best practices for HRDs so they can be able to navigate safely the digital space and securely. And then also we are looking to push for the conduction of further research to assess the relationship between national human rights institutions and HRDs to ensure the full implementation of the Marrakesh Declaration, and which is to promote and protect the human rights of HRDs, especially those of women, children, and minorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael, for the very detailed exposition. We are grateful that you could take us through all of the various pointers. I mean, it's a lot to take in at this point. I know people have questions and aspects of it where they would require further explanations and would have time for that. But for now, I want to go straight to the launch of this report. We are privileged to have Mr. Clement Vole, the former UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Association and Peaceful Assembly, and a member of the Pan-African Defenders Network. He presented some brief remarks earlier in the course of the program, and we are privileged to still have him with us here to do the official launch of the report. And then after that, we would have a brief roundtable discussion. We have Aliou Barry, the Executive Director of StatView International from Guinea. Dr. Aliou Barry is also a co-chair of the steering committee of Wadimos Network. David Asante Dako is a research analyst at Wadimos. He will also join us for the brief discussion. And then Mr. Victor Lansana. Victor Lansana is a lawyer and a commissioner at the Sierra Leone Human Rights Commission. The three of them would be doing justice to this report, as well as highlighting other human rights violations that have taken place in the sub-region over in recent times. So I want to invite Mr. Clement Vole to do us the honors. Please, you have the floor, Mr. Clement Vole, the former UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of association and peaceful assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, moderator. Again, I would like to thank all those who are participating on this event, but also in particular the drafter and initiator of this report for giving us, all of us, the opportunity really to again discuss about challenges and way forward of what human rights defenders are facing in the sub-region. And I think through the presentation of the reports, one can also see the difficult and worsening challenges in which human rights defenders in West Africa are operating, and also the urgency to take concrete measure in order to overcome some of the challenges if we don't want to see this region falling within authoritarianism, and if we don't also want to see a completely backsliding of democracy, but also if we don't want also to see a region where, for example, and this we must also continue to emphasize that, where young people are living and also dying in the sea of Mediterranean. Because one thing that is important also to continue to emphasize is when there is no opportunity, when there is no legal framework, when there is no possibility for people to live on freedom, but also to have opportunities also to work, but also for defenders to fight against inequality and to promote an environment that gives opportunity for all of us. The only thing that's left for young people is to leave the region and to go for adventure. And we are seeing what is happening around the continent, in particular around the Mediterranean Sea on this. So I want again to really emphasize the relevance and the fact that this report is coming timely to call again, to make another call for the international community, for ECOWAS, for African Commission, for the UN to pay particular attention of the situation of human rights defenders in West Africa. The report makes some useful recommendations, which are important today that we should put them in the perspective, we should put them in action plan. They are actionable if you look at these recommendations and calling the ECOWAS and looking at how ECOWAS can increase its protection for those who are fighting, for what ECOWAS committed to build a region that everyone will live, to build a region where minorities, marginalized groups, issues also are taken in account. So I think is really a call for me this morning again to say that this report offers us another opportunity again to build a region where living together is strengthened, where no one is discriminated because his sexual orientation, his race, or where he's coming from, or his social status, because he's a woman or whatever. So this report gives us a chance again to recommit ourselves to those who have put their life to promote human rights, to promote fundamental freedom, those who put their life, those who sacrifice themselves to build peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable societies in West Africa. So I would like, based on this, and thanking again for all of these people who, or all of those who contribute to these reports. I would like again to stand as a former special rapporteur on the right to freedom of association, peaceful assembly, to launch these reports and invite again the international community donor to support such initiative, and also all of us to continue to work together in order to improve the situation of human rights defenders in the region. Thank you again, and I declare officially launch this report on the situation of human rights defenders in West Africa. Thanks again for all of you.
Thank you very much for doing us honest. We are grateful that you could spend some time with us, and also we have the opportunity to have you launch this very important report for the benefit of not only people within civil society or human rights, but even the general public. For institutions, you repeated the call to multilateral institutions to take interest in the situation of human rights defenders. You also highlighted the fact that the recommendations, and that's my key takeaway. A lot of the time, some of these reports are done, and the recommendations are not ones that can be easily or within a short to medium term, be implemented. But you highlighted the fact that most of the recommendations we have in this report are actionable. And I take solace in the fact that it's something we can, together with other institutions and stakeholders, take action to ensure that it becomes a reality, and we create a safer environment for the generation before us, the generation now, and the generation to come. Because the International Democracy Day this year focuses on youth involvement. So I would want to invite for the roundtable discussion. The guest, Mr. Dr. Aliu Bari, the Executive Director of StatsView International. Also invite David Asante Dapon, who is a research analyst at Wadimos. And then Victor Lansana, who is a lawyer and a commissioner at the Sierra Leone Human Rights Commission for the roundtable discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Jonah, for giving me the floor. If you agree, I would like to speak in French. So let us give 2-3 minutes to the interpreter. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Euh, m'appesantir sur un certain nombre de points. Le premier aspect, c'est les défenseurs des droits de l'homme. Qui on appelle défenseurs des droits de l'homme? Il me semble que le concept, s'il est globalement admis, il y a quand même en termes de pratique sur le terrain, peut-être quelques nuances à faire entre pays francophones et pays anglophones. Et chez nous, ce n'est pas toujours bien perçu. C'est-à-dire quand vous dites que vous êtes défenseur des droits de l'homme, il y a parfois une sorte de glissement. C'est-à-dire que quand ceux qui défendent les droits de l'homme s'associent aux politiciens à des moments précis pour intervenir sur le terrain, ça pose problème et ça amène la répression. Et je pense peut-être qu'à ce niveau-là, nous, en tant qu'acteurs de la société civile, nous devons comprendre que nous sommes politiquement pas neutres, mais nous sommes politiquement neutres vis-à-vis des différents camps. Donc, je crois qu'à ce niveau-là, je pense que le rapport devrait aussi faire ce travail pour que l'on comprenne effectivement que les défenseurs des droits de l'homme qui sont et qui relèvent de la société civile doivent comprendre que la société civile, quand on dit société civile, c'est pas forcément les partis politiques. Donc, cette différence doit être faite. Le deuxième point, il me semble, qui à mon avis a manqué dans le rapport, ce deuxième point qui a manqué dans le rapport, c'est le rôle des leaders religieux. Le rôle des leaders religieux. Les leaders religieux sont absolument importants. Ils sont très importants dans tout ce qui est défense des droits de l'homme, défense des droits humains. Je n'en ai pas suffisamment entendu parler ici. Chez nous, par exemple, les leaders religieux, pour les prières du vendredi et parfois les dimanches avec les chrétiens, ils touchent des points très importants concernant la défense des droits de l'homme. Et ils sont respectés, ils sont écoutés.
We need to make sure that they are implied, because the religious leaders also have a role to play, because they have the populace, or they have a population that they can equally share these messages with, so that anytime they have the floor or the opportunity on any podium or platform, they are able to send out the message of solidarity or democracy, or what we want to also do as HRD. In fact, they also play the key role when it comes to the advisory role as in their capacity as religious leaders. For example, we have issues where we've engaged religious leaders to help us in any mediation process, or when we are even carrying out any democratic activity or campaign or something. So we need to look at it from that angle, because no matter what, there's also that link with the Bible or the Quran. Yes, we know that the issue of how women also come in must also be looked at, because we need to promote women's group in the fight or in the campaign that we're carrying out as HRD. We need to, because we have had instances of where women have suffered all manner of human rights violations. Some have lost their lives and all that. I believe that at this point we need to find a space where we can bring on board women and women's group. We need to find a way of making sure that the women's issue or feminism are also brought on board as equal as that of the male counterpart. We need to empower the women and also empower other women's group, so that they can also have a stake in this. I think my last, let not waste much time, is education. In my opinion, I think the young generation, I'm talking about people around 30 years, who have not really come to appreciate what is really ongoing in the country. They are often missing in the puzzle, because it appears that sometimes they are lost and they don't know what role they have to play. But I encourage Wademos to look at it from this angle. If they can visit the schools or find a way of contributing to the curriculum, so that even at the basic stage, even as when they are going through the educational ladder, at every point they are encouraged or they are oriented in issues regarding democracy and all that, and then what the work of the HRD are, and then the moment they are exposed to these things, when they grow up, no matter what situation or wherever they find themselves, they would surely use that in their daily lives, and it becomes part of them, and gradually we can have the expansion or the coverage that we are looking at. Because even as they are part of the society, we need to also encourage them and then build their capacity, because in all cases, wherever they find themselves, whatever platform they find themselves on, they are able to defend the human rights of everyone. Because in our case, there are a lot of issues that hinges on human rights. I think I'll draw my curtains here, and then thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, David, and everyone, and Paul, my friend. Thank you all. Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
And any member of the team available here. I want to invite Dr. I'm graduating David already. I want to invite, before I come to David, Victor Lansana, who is a lawyer and a commissioner at the Sierra Leone Human Rights Commission, to also present his perspectives on the report that has been presented, and how, from his perspective and experience, we can at least actualize the recommendations put forth in the report. And Victor Lansana, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. It's an opportunity for me to be here to share perspectives that I have with regards to this report, and I'm sure my second bite would be on the role or the collaboration between civil society organizations and national human rights institutions. So on the very first lot,
you can address the two together.
Oh, together.
You can address the 2 points.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let me start first of all with the report. My initial observations. All I'll do, I'll first start with my initial observations. They include, I'll go like this. what I have not seen in the report is a clear definition of who are human rights defenders. I know, of course, every civil society organization activists hold themselves out as human rights defenders. But then, for the purposes of this report, when we talk about human rights defenders, there should be a scope. I don't know whether citizens, journalists, people who just, for instance, sit abroad, they fan the flames of chaos back home. I don't know whether they will be considered as human rights defenders because they say they speak on behalf of people. But in many cases, we see that they actually foment problems or troubles in our countries. So would we consider them as human rights defenders? So a report like this should have been able to have a scope of a definition of human rights defenders. And then also, I've gone through the report, but I did not see anywhere in the report where you are able to engage national human rights institutions who are the statutory bodies that actually monitor human rights situations in our countries. And the report is titled "The State of Human Rights in the Region." But if you do not have perspective from the national human rights institutions who actually have the mandate to produce an annual report on the state of human rights in their various countries, then I think that one should be considered in future reports or investigations like this. Again, I've observed that there is not much emphasis on the role of human rights defenders themselves. My goodness, has this gone off?
We are following.
Are you following? I can't see I can't see the video.
Yeah, Mr. Lansana, we are following.
Okay. Okay. So I was also saying that I have not seen in the report, where the report actually so much focuses on duty bearers. We live in a society, we live in a region where, of course, the duty bearers should be the ones to take the lead to protect human rights defenders. But of course, we also know that there is a responsibility that the human rights defenders themselves will carry. So, for instance, a human rights defender is expected to make sure that it considers the rights of other people when doing their work. It considers the stability and security of the state when doing their work. So I believe that a portion of the report should have been addressed towards highlighting the responsibilities of human rights defenders themselves. Having said that, in a whole, I find the content of the report very, very interesting, very, very instructive. So much has been put into it, and the report actually brings bare the state of human rights, specifically with the second generation rights. And that is, also maybe another observation, that the report focuses only on the second generation of rights, leaving out but of course, I know that every report has its own. But today, in these days, we have to pay much more attention on the second generation, because these are rights that actually put food on our table. These are rights that bring dignity to ourselves and our families, because when you're educated, for instance, when there is the right to health that is enhanced, the right to education, it makes sure as an individual you grow up well, you're able to take care of yourself and cater for your needs and the needs of your family. So it's something that we have to think of. And like I've said, the report is very good. I love the fact that for instance, for Sierra Leone, you made mention of how the civic space has been a problem over the years, particularly with the rights to freedom of assembly and association. It is something that the Human Rights Commission of Sierra Leone has severally taken up with its police, the Sierra Leone police, because in many of their occasions, many of their actions, they have rights of citizens in terms of allowing spontaneous, peaceful assemblies. That has led to several problems over the years. So what we have done, in fact, as a National Human Rights Institution, we conducted what we call a public inquiry into the conduct of law enforcement officers for a period of 7 years, from 2015 to 2021, to pay the sum of 300 million yuans to victims of human rights violations, and about 270 million yuans as against the military, to also pay victims of human rights violations. So indeed, this report shows that yes, there is an acceptance of the fact that the civic space, in terms of the enjoyment of the right to freedom of assembly and association, is really shrinking, and we must all come on board to make sure that we're able to address it head on, because otherwise, we